What we've got here is failure to communicate.
Hey, I'm UFC President Dana White, and you're in the ring with Callum McGregor.
Welcome back. I think that, you were off with Tinman and Dorothy and shit, clicking your heels together. How you been? What's going on? Tell me about how your experience has been the past 2 weeks.
It's been good, man. It's been a little bit of a rough road. I said I missed out on the last podcast because where I live up in Ottawa, we had a tornado that came and took down about 1,000 trees, and all the power lines were down. And for my area, it took us about 8 days to get everything back together. Certain areas had a little better luck than us, 2 or 3 days, but not a good time, man. The whole city was under distress for quite some time. They're still dealing with some of the repercussions from it. Probably will be for some time.
That is absolutely crazy. And obviously, the first thing is everybody's safe and sound, and that's the best thing. But it can't be good to have things down and businesses out and, homes out with power and losing food and all these things. So I can't imagine how much of a setback and how probably frustrating that probably was to feel like you're sort of stuck in the mud. So sorry that you went through that, but let's make that money back then. That's one way to do it. No?
It's one way to do it, man. I wasn't too happy because I said, I put down a big bet, and then I woke up on the next morning, still didn't have power, didn't get any sort of charge on my phone until about the Monday. And then I realized that Holly Holm lost a pretty bullshit decision from what it seemed. And wasn't too happy about that. But
we're still feeling the reverb from that, or whatever you would say, the ripple effect from that. But I've watched it again and over again, and based on what they're saying the new criteria is, I'm just going to do what everybody else is doing. Instead of worrying about what it was, I'm going to adjust how I approach betting moving forward. So it used to always be the wrestler, the dominant wrestler is the guy to go, and it's just not anymore. It's going to be, is that dominant wrestler facing a person of power? Do they have power? If they have power, and they may have a couple moments where they land some big shots, I got to look at that. Also, is that wrestler active with their strikes? If their wrestler gets dominant position, or grappler gets dominant position and lands a lot of elbows and, some good ground and pound, I'm all with them. I'm for that. So if you have dominance combined with striking, I'm in on betting on you. But I'm done with betting on the wrestler that's going to hold position, because in most cases, unless they are like crazily dominant, they're probably going to lose in most cases. We had Damon Jackson win on the weekend in a way where he sort of clinched on, but he did land quite a few strikes as well too. He was throwing quite a bit. That's what we're gonna have to look at. That was the argument with Holly Holm. We're gonna rehash that, but she was landing a lot of clinch strikes up against the cage. That was my opinion. But either way, at least we have a little bit more clarity as to what the judges are looking for, which will make it easier to bet on certain fights. And also creates a lot more if you look at it live betting situations. If you want to bet tricky and have some spots this week that we can talk about. So.
Fair.
Anything that you wanted to talk about on the actual last week's card? I know that we had, a little bit of, it was a little hard for some people to watch in your area and whatnot. I don't know if the power was still out in some spots, but what did you think of the actual card?
Overall, I think it was a pretty good card. I didn't pay too much attention to it. I saw the majority of the fights. Like anything else, man, a couple small mistakes. Put too much faith in Trezano. But other than that, it still was good. I kept it pretty simple, kept my main parlay to the last 2 fights. Had a couple sneaky plays. One, Jeff Molina by split decision, plus 800. That was a nice little win for me. I like that in Ontario, we got the... See, because in that fight, man, that's the one where I saw everybody just piling money on Molina. And I'm like, I don't see it being that... I saw that fight as a pick 'em. Everybody else kept throwing money his direction. I'm like... fuck it. I'm like, I'll play. I think Molina will get the split. I don't see this being as clear cut as the way the odds makers are making this one to be.
For sure. Yeah, I think we got to see more in that card to see how the judging is going as well too, and the way that it's moving. So let's move into this card and see how we are going to approach these fights. Let's make some money, line some pockets, and get back to motherfucking business. Can we get back to business?
A fucking time, man.
All right, let's do it. So let's start off with the first fight of the night, the main event of the night, but the first fight on our podcast. We have Yuri Prochazka, the scary tongue pole, kickboxer, villainous looking character. When he gets in that cage, he's very scary, very crazy with his striking. He is the definition of savage and is very scary. He's going up against the champ, man. He's going up against Glover Teixeira, who is a guy who was initially the scary striker from Brazil. And we thought that in that case that with Glover coming in, that would be the main thing that we would see when he first tried to get into the UFC. It would just be all striking all day, all long. And what ended up happening was in Connecticut, he ended up learning grappling. He ended up getting into his grappling game, his jiu-jitsu, and getting into his wrestling. And that is his game. That is what he's known for. But he does have the striking. The only thing I'm scared of is if Glover gets touched once or twice and turns into a little bit of a shell of himself. And that is the one thing I'm scared of, because if that even happens in a moment, Yuri is going to destroy him, obliterate him like it's a Marvel movie. He is going to annihilate him in that moment. But that being said, having Glover as the dog and then looking at his path to victory, looking at his history and the guys and the murderers that he's beat and fought, I mean, I got to go with Glover. I think that if you go with Yuri Prochazka, I get what he's done. I get some of the guys that he's beaten, but and more recently, his step up in competition has gotten a lot better. And he has proven it. He deserves to be right in the spot that he's in. But I can't not take Glover at plus money. And what's the line sitting at right now?
Right now, I think Glover's sitting at a plus 180 or plus 195. The return on Yuri Prochazka is minus 150.
Okay. And I mean, this one could be a live betting situation multiple different ways. You got to sort of see how that first round plays out, because Prochazka can knock him out later in the fight. He can knock him out early, and Glover can also submit early and late as well too. You just got to sort of see how they're playing off each other. If Glover can wrap him up, what that looks like. If Glover ends up looking like he's getting tired trying to grapple him at the beginning of the first round. There's live betting situations there, but I just think that I think I'm going to go with Glover on that, and likely I may keep that fight separate. I'm not going to really probably do any parlays this week. If we do a parlay, I don't think this is the fight to do it on, because I'm more leaning Glover, unless you're leaning Prochazka, and we can talk about it. But I will pass it off to you. I think I'm going to go with the dog, the champ, Glover Teixeira.
Yeah, ironically enough, man, I'm leaning Prochazka on this one. But like as you said, this is kind of one of these fights where it's going to go one of two ways. Glover's either going to be able to get that takedown, or Yuri's going to be able to keep it on the feet, and then he's going to be in a relative amount of danger. From a betting perspective, man, smashing the under on this fight, I think, is the best way to go about it. But I do like Yuri in this spot. Like, I think that he'll be able to keep this fight standing, and I think that his forward pressure is going to be enough to take Glover out. A lot of the people that Glover has beaten recently, one being obviously the champion and stuff like that, still a little bit over the hill. Thiago Santos really has looked like a shell of himself. Anthony Smith, 50-50 if he actually shows up. Nikita Krylov went to a split decision, and so on and so forth, right? Where I think Yuri's just the younger, hungrier fighter. Strength of schedule really isn't on his side in this one. He's got losses to people like King Mo that to me are a little bit worrisome, although he did get that fight back. I do lean Yuri in this one, though. I think he's going to end it. I think it's going to end it early. But as you said, man, like, this is the type of fight I like to have as a top ticket, just based on the fact that the hedge is there. This fight isn't going the distance. And if Yuri wins, it's going to be by KO. And if Glover wins, it's going to be by submission. So I'm going to side with Yuri in this one. But essentially, if I do make a parlay, I'm probably going to put Yuri KO on the top of one and Glover submission at the top of the other, just to secure myself a profit if I make my way there.
Yeah, I'm going to take a look. Actually, one way I'm going to start betting a little bit more is even looking at Bodog, there's like the double down. So you get KO and decision. I mean, if I would have went submission and decision on everything last week, almost that I was feeling, I would have been in a very good spot. But I think that's the way I may look at this one. But yeah, I don't know. I think I want to keep this fight sort of separate. I just think there's so many angles and ways to approach this fight. I really look forward to talking to Crew Atlanta about this. I just think that Yuri Prochazka, I don't think his chance to beat the wrestler is through his defensive grappling or defensive wrestling. It's going to be through the knockout. That's what he did to CB Dalloway. That's the only way. He's going to have to be offensive. And I think that if he gets too aggressive, he's going to get taken down and he's done. And I think if he does that stupid shit, as calculated as he may think it is, he's going to get taken down. But if he comes in and touches Glover, Not enough just to wake him up. He's got to touch him, but just don't put everything into your shots right away. Land a couple, then go for the kill. I think that's the way to victory. But that is me. Next fight on the card: Valentina Shevchenko against Talia Santos. Talia Santos gets a shot maybe a little bit earlier than I think that we thought that she was going to get one. Although maybe we didn't, because there's really nobody else left to fight Valentina. We know what Talia brings to the table. She can, grapple up against the cage. She's got big bombs. Her punches are a little bit more hooking punches, which I think that, Shevchenko is going to have a field day with. I think that she's going to be able to piece her up, even though, I think Santos is probably going to come up with the game plan. She's going to have to come in and just rush her right away. It's the only way to do it. I think everybody, that's their game plan at this point, to try to, swarm her and get her off her game plan right away and see if you can touch her face. I think leg kicks would be a good play, but even that, the footwork's too good from Shevchenko to really stop her. Regardless, I'm just sort of trying to find an angle for Santos to even have an opportunity, and I don't know if she even has a full puncher's chance. That being said, Nunes, right? It can happen, but I don't know if it's going to be in this spot. What's the line sitting at right now? Is it minus 800?
Minus 700 for Shevchenko, with the return on Talia Santos at plus 500.
Yeah, this is where if you do a parlay, you hedge. Obviously, this is the end of your parlay. You go with Shevchenko by, she could finish in almost any way. I don't know if it would be TKO in this situation. a head kick could happen. If it happens, it is what it is. I would say go submission and decision, Shevchenko. And then Talia Santos by KO, man. I don't see her being able to land enough big shots for 5 rounds to warrant anything that would ever be a decision. It's a KO or bust. And I think if she even touched Shevchenko on the chin and dropped her and went for a submission, I think Shevchenko is good enough that she'd be able to bounce back and get back to her feet and do what she's going to do. So it's KO or bust with the hedge, and that's how I would play it. Dealing with Shevchenko lines are always so fun because they're always so inflated and crazy. Probably one of the most most justly inflated lines that are out there. Your thoughts on this fight? I know obviously your side, but what's your sort of take on it and how are you playing it?
Yeah, ironically enough, I've been betting on tennis a lot recently, and in tennis, you can bet on if somebody's going to win a round. And whenever you have big chalky fights like this, that's where I kind of wish you can go, because that would be a nice bet. I think Talia Santos may be able to land a takedown or two, cool, and actually, win a round. But that would be the only way if they ever came up with a prop like this.
If you see live scorecards, so you can see scorecards, it takes out live betting. But that would probably add that in. It would probably be round betting.
That's it. And, because I could see Talia Santos winning a round maybe. But obviously I don't see her winning this fight. As for you, the only thing I would differ from, honestly, your breakdown on this is I'd go with TKO over decision, TKO decision as a double chance, just because the last time Shevchenko actually got a submission was Priscilla back in 2018. Her last 4 finishes have been ground and pound, essentially, despite the head kick to Jessica Eye. But I'm with you, man. I don't really see a world where Santos wins this. She couldn't get Roxanne Modafferi out of there. It's – I don't know.
And that really is the gauge right there. That's the marker on that, right? If you want to really see if she's ready, she couldn't get a retiring Roxanne Modafferi out of there.
Yeah, she couldn't beat Jillian Robertson. She couldn't get Molly McCann out of there. I don't know. She had that finish over Joanne Wood, but she seems to be like she was 1 foot out the door anyways. So, you got to go with Shevchenko. It's not really worth playing the money line, but I don't know. I don't really see a way to bet this fight where you're going to get your money's worth, because for all we know, Shevchenko is going to come out and kick her in the head, and this thing is going to be over in a round.
Sure. Okay, next fight on the card, we move on to the people's main event. We got Weili Zhang against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Wow. We have a woman who's been away for some time and a woman who has lost. She's been back and still hasn't been so active in the past little bit. You could argue her fights against Rose Namajunas one way or the other. I saw Rose winning those, but if we look at this, man, this is going to be obviously a rehash of one of the best fights ever in the history of not only women's MMA, but MMA in general. I'm really, really excited for this fight, and I really am going to just jump in here and tell you that I'm going to go with the dog. I know that Joanna right now is still sitting, or Joanna's still sitting at what's the plus money right now?
Plus money right now is plus 140 on Joanna.
Yeah, I mean, she's got 3 rounds to sprint. I know she's been away for time, but she's a level. She was a level of fighter when she was in here, and I don't see her losing that just because she's been away. I think that the time away actually will be probably beneficial for her to some degree. Hopefully she's been at least sparring heavily up to some point to really get that in-game feel, at least to some degree. But I'm going to go with her dog money, man. I think that's one of the dogs of the week for me. I think it would be crazy not to give it a shot.
Yeah, for sure. As we go down this card, you're going to see I honestly have a lot of dogs on this card that I like. So for me, there's going to be a lot of prop betting this week because obviously if I'm betting a lot of dogs, money lines aren't really where I want to put my money. But I agree with you on this one as well. I think the thing with Joanna is that a lot of people are going to look at her Instagram and see all the bikini pictures and her kind of out doing her thing and take away from it and what she can come in and do. But Joanna, somebody's got like 40 Muay Thai fights. She's one of the veterans of women's MMA. So she's not going to come into this fight unprepared, and you're stupid to think if she's going to. I personally scored the first fight for Joanna as well. The only thing that I will say that worries me on the Joanna side of this one is she can be a slow starter, and that's the polar opposite whenever it comes to Zhang. And it's only a 3-round fight. If this was 5 rounds, I would be balls deep in betting Joanna on this one. But I'm with you. I side with the dog. I think Weili Zhang is going to be a little more hesitant coming in. She's coming off a couple losses. But, yeah, Simon, I'm with you, man. I like Joanna a lot in the spot. Prop-wise, though, fight goes to decision. Minus 250, I think, is a golden play in this. Excuse me. I don't see a finish happening in this fight at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be 3 rounds of war, 3 rounds of just all in, like rock'em sock'em robot type stuff. And I've heard not only from some cappers and podcasts, but other people in different gyms that a lot of people are really thinking that Joanna's just going to come and go balls to the wall on this. And I know she is typically a slow starter, but because it's one of her first 3 rounds in a while. Actually, maybe her last one. What was her last fight? Regardless, I'm very, very excited for this one, and we're both on the same page. This is definitely going to be possibly fight of the night. So if you don't watch MMA, but you want to see an amazing fight, at least tune in for that one. Okay, so we have the next fight on the card. We have Rogerio Bontorin against Manel Kape. I faded Manel Kape quite a bit in the beginning of this and paid for it, and also made money off of it as well too. And I think he has come into his own. I think that if Bontorin can actually go in and implement a game plan where he actually gets his respect right away, I think that might be the play. But he's going to have to get close and really get, get some dirty box going and then actually grapple him and get him going. What are your thoughts on this one? We have Manel Kape against Rogerio Bontorin. What are the odds on this one right now?
Right now, Manel Kape sits at a minus 225 favor with the return on Bontorin being a plus 187.
Plus murder. Yeah, I mean, I'm leaning Manel Kape very heavily in this one. I already have him actually in a parlay. So I just think that he's gonna be able to do what he wants. I think if he lands a big shot early, he's gonna be able to put Rogerio away. What's your take on this one? How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I'm pretty big on Manel Kape to begin with. Like whenever he came in the UFC, I was pretty high on him. He kind of took a couple tough losses, but I'm with you. Like, I'm hoping he kind of learned from that, just in the basis that, like, he seemed kind of overconfident and cocky whenever he came in. Bontorin's good. He looked decent against Royval, but I think it's primarily because he was able to hold Royval down. The second the fight got back to the feet, Royval started kind of taking over, which is where I think Kape's going to be able to just kind of do this. Manel Kape's got a lot of submissions on his record too, KOs. He can kind of finish his fight in any way that he wants to. So I like Manel Kape. I like the money line. And I don't mind actually Kape by decision just because I think that he's going to know that he needs this win and that he's going to come in here a little bit cautious and, jabs, leg kicks.
This is definitely a KO and decision bet.
That's it. If you have that prop, smash the shit out of it because there's not going to be a submission.
Okay, next fight in the card, we have Jack Della Maddalena against, oh man, we can say that so smooth now. Remember when we first started to learn that name on the Dana White Contender Series? Against Ramazan Ameev. There's a lot of takes on this fight. A lot of people are really obviously leaning with Jack Della, but there's a little bit of people still leaning into the wrestling on Ameev and wondering the way this would go. This fight is a perfect example of how we need to adjust to the new judges' scoring. If this fight goes to decision, it is going to likely be a Jack Della fight because he's going to have moments where he's going to pop Ramazan's head back. Even if Ameev gets 4 to 5 minutes of control time, I think Jack Della is going to make a really big point on the feet, a really big point up against the cage. And whenever he can on the ground, he will make a really big point. He scrambles well. He did before he got into the Contender Series. He did in that match as well, too. But if you look at even his regional tape, and I know, the level is lower than Ameev. This is a step up. He scrambles well. He deals with adversity well. And his striking is vicious. He reminds me of the London boys in London, Ontario. They work the body so well. It's body up, bang, bang, bang. Sam Stout and the boys, Horodesky. It's a lot of work that a lot of fighters don't really invest in that body work. And you'll see liver shots. You're going to see, from there, then uppercuts and leading with those hooks. And I just think that Maddalena is going to be able to land enough big shots. If it goes to decision, it's him by decision. This is another one where I'd probably go KO or decision, Maddalena. That's my take on this. I know Ameev's, his wrestling is really good, and it actually may, result in him getting control time. But in the new world we live in, I'm not touching it. So I'm going to go with Maddalena on this one pretty heavily.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think fucking Jack Della is probably one of the locks of the night on this card, just based on the fact that his style fits very well against Ramazan and Ameev, just because Ameev's the type of guy who's going to hold you against the cage, super low volume. But what people seem to understand is I feel like he's getting that Russian treatment here, but he doesn't have the same aggression that a lot of these Russian fighters come in and have. Yeah, he shoots for a lot of takedowns, but he doesn't land well on them. He's got about a 26% takedown accuracy. So a lot of his game is holding you up against the cage. And as you pointed out, the judges don't seem to be awarding you for those types of things anymore. So this is the type of fight you kind of want to stay away from, at least on his side of things. And Jack Della is such a high-paced fighter, man. He's not going to give him that opportunity. Even if Ramazan holds him up against the fence, Jack Della is still going to be throwing punches, still going to be throwing knees. He's going to be doing what he can to break away. And whenever they're breaking away, he's going to be throwing uppercuts up the middle to try and take his head off. So I'm with you, man. I like Jack Della. Minus 150 at the money line, I think, is honestly a very fair price on this fight. So I'm excited for this one a lot, to be honest. Primarily because Ramazan Ameev has kind of screwed me a couple times. So I'm really hoping I can get it back on this one.
And what did you say what the line was at?
Minus 150.
Okay.
So the money seems to be coming in on Ramazan. I think last time I looked at it, Jack Della was about minus 175.
So it might be one to just hold out, wait till even weigh-ins, let them stare each other down because Jack doesn't look like much.
No.
He's sort of a lankier. Well, he's like a lankier boxer type of frame, right? I can't remember if he actually was really ripped, but I remember him being more lanky. And next fight on the card. This is one that I'll be honest, I didn't get a chance to watch too much tape. I'm going to lean on you with this one. I'm not going to pretend like I'm really fully invested. We have Sungwoo Choi 10-4-0 against Joshua Kilabao 9-1-1. I don't know if that's an omen or not. That's his record right now. What is your take on this one? I'm just going to leave it right to you. I'm going to come up with a take probably at over 1.5. If I do have a take, I'm probably going to stay off it altogether. You take it away.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think, well, one thing I'll say, I think the line is a little bit wide in this. I think the minus 240 on Sungwoo Choi is a little bit juiced at this point, but I do think he's the rightful favorite in the spot. Joshua, he's a good fighter. He's got good striking, decent grappling, but he's not someone who I think is necessarily the most UFC material fighter. He's had 2 fights in UFC. He lost to Jalen Turner, which is nothing to be, mad about, and I lost to Shaylon and a fighter that I'm not going to pronounce his last name. But if you watch that fight, he's shooting heavily for takedowns. I win to Shaylon. He's shooting heavily for takedowns and, just trying to keep this fight on the feet whenever he can. And he kind of shows that he's relatively well-rounded. But as I said, I think Sungwoo Choi, he's going to have a fairly large reach advantage. And he's got the better striking and the better grappling in this fight. So I think Sungwoo Choi rides this one to a decision. But as I said, I think the line's a little bit wide at this point.
Okay. Next fight on the card, we have one that I'm actually pretty excited about after watching tape. Mahashate, I'm going to leave it right there against Steve Garcia. So Steve Garcia is a finishing machine, and it's you know what you're going to get when you're going to see him in the cage, plain and simple. If we look at Mahashate, the one thing I saw on tape with him is I really like his striking, and I think actually, if you would pair them in against each other, you may actually maybe see Mahashate having, that edge in the striking and be able to land a little bit more. I don't know what the actual, thrown amount of punches landed per minute are for both guys. But in watching the striking back and forth between the two of them, although Garcia has the finishing rate, Mahashate, it looks good, man. It almost makes me want to, though, look at maybe just going under or fight doesn't go. This one with how Garcia's finish rate is, and then just you're going to see them gauge quite a bit. It could go either way. What do you think on this one? I think Mahashate is what's the line sitting at? I'd actually start with that.
The line right now is sitting at plus 140 for Hasir Mahashate and minus 170 for Steve Garcia Jr.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a pick 'em. You might want to go with the guy who's been in the UFC a little bit longer. But yeah, man, also you go with the Jackson Wink curse and fade Garcia, whatever way you want to approach it. Those are obviously, whimsical ways to approach betting. Don't do it. But yeah, man, I think the under is the best way to play this one. What's your thoughts on this
one? I like Steve Garcia a lot in this fight. I don't think a lot about Hasir, and I think Garcia's pressure is just going to be the ultimate difference in this fight. If you look at his loss to Pena, he was 100% in that fight. But as we've seen time and time again with Pena, if he gets your back, man, and he'll literally put in that back hold and just shoot for that rear naked choke time and time again. And unfortunately, that fight just went to a decision, and it wasn't really exciting. But I don't think that Hasir is going to be able to give him that opportunity. He's 6-1. He's kind of faced the lackluster competition, and Garcia. So I think he's going to take this guy out in the first round.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so we're on the same page. I think maybe I'm just not as heavily invested in the actual fight, but I think that, your take also lines up with me anyway, so I will take it. I'm just being a little bit more of a pussy about it, right? Next fight on the card, a fight that I think everybody's very excited for, and also a fight that could be possibly the one that everybody's tweeting out about, that everybody's really upset about. Fialho right now, Andre Fialho against Jake Matthews. Andre Fialho really is just a fucking tank, and he's smashing people. We know that he has a little bit of a gas tank issue, and I just think what's the line sitting at right now? This is why I'm taking this angle.
Right now it's a minus 160 for Fialho with the return on Matthews at plus 130.
Okay, so I think money is probably coming back in on Matthews because we're looking at a grappling situation, and everybody is hoping that he can get to the grappling situation. And I mean, he's been in the UFC for quite some time. He does have the strength of schedule in that way. But Fialho is just fighting guy after guy, and he likes wars. Can the grappling actually play a role? This is a live betting situation. This is a live betting fight. I think you isolate this fight. I would not put Fialho in any parlays because you may get hurt. The only thing I would say is maybe go Fialho KO or Fialho round 1, or you can do Fialho round 1 and 2, depending on what books you find, and then look at Jake Matthews live, plain and simple. After round 1, see where that fight goes. Look for Jake Matthews live. It doesn't mean that Andre Fialho can't still finish it in the second round, but I think everybody's potentially, you can see money come back in on Fialho. And everybody's expecting him to knock out Jake Matthews, and I don't know if that's going to happen. So we will see. I know you'll have probably a hot take on this, but I think live betting this one and setting yourself up that way is probably the best way to approach this. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't hate that angle at all because Fialho is very, very live in the first round. But I'm honestly I'm on the Jake Matthews side on this one. I like this kid a lot, man. They lost to Sean Brady. He did show a lot in that fight. Sean Brady's one of these guys, man. He's breaking in the top 10. The guy's going to be a top 5 relatively soon. And I think if you look at Fialho, man, I think there's a lot of recency bias in this. I like the guy, but I think to me, this is the opportunity where you should take advantage of fading him. he's gotten hurt in every single one of his fights in the UFC. Pereira hurt him. Can't remember the other guy's name that he just fought. Hurt him. But Hazer hurt him. And Van Camp hurt him. You know? So the guy's going to come out guns blazing. But like whenever you're throwing these wild hooks, as much as Matthews isn't necessarily known to be a wrestler, he does have a wrestling background. And I think he's going to be able to take advantage of it in the spot. And honestly, I think if Matthews can get through the first round, I think that's really where he's just going to be able to take over.
You have props up?
What do we have up?
What's Fialho KO, Fialho first round or under 1.5? And then you could really just cover yourself completely.
Yeah, Fialho KO right now is only plus 110. The under 1.5 is plus 125.
Yeah, so you go under 1.5, obviously in that scenario. But if you went Fialho in round 1, and then went Matthews, live bet, I think that's the way to play this one, man.
Yeah, I said I don't hate it, man. But yeah, I don't know.
But when you do it, I mean, if whatever way you lean on it, because I am sort of leaning with you. That's how you're going to bet it. So if you're looking at Fialho as you think he's going to be the one that's going to come out of this, you can sprinkle heavier on that. But I think I'm going to sprinkle lighter on the KO in round 1 with the bigger odds, and then go with, if there is a live betting situation with Matthews, or you go with him decision or whatever way you see him winning the fight, maybe a late submission, your little third round sprinkle. Actually, what would be good would be Jake Matthews round 3 decision.
Yeah, and I think that's the way to do it. Because honestly, if you look at Jake Matthews, he has a fair bit of submissions on his record, but his last one was the Shinsuke Anazai in 2018. So he's not really, his last 3 wins have come by decision. And yeah, I think he's just gonna, I think if he wins this fight, he's gonna grind it out. But if you're Ben Jake Matthews, you're really gonna sweat that first round.
Either way, it's gonna be a fun fight to watch.
I'm excited.
I mean, if it goes even to decision, the only thing that would be absolutely crazy in the new world is that Matthews grapples him and even lands a little bit of decent striking, but Fialho has maybe a big moment in every round and he wins the decision. And there was a crazy amount of control time by Matthews. Imagine that. I'll leave that one out there because I hope I don't have to post it. But if I have to post this after, because when it happens, wow. Anyways, next fight in the card, we have Kyung-Yo Kang, 17-9-0 against Dana Baccarel Dana, 12-3-0. And this one is pretty straightforward. And most fights with Dana Baccarel are, he has a very shoot-a-box style, man. He has like these hooks and combos and he flurries forward. The only thing is he's unbalanced at times. I noticed this in his last fight, his last couple fights actually. When he's landing those hooks and he plays in the pocket, he leaves himself open for takedowns. Is Kyung-Yo Kang good enough to be able to actually take him down on the regular? I don't know, and keep him down. Once again, in this new world that we're living in, is Kyung-Yo Kang going to take him down enough and hold him down enough and then land enough when he's holding him in position? Are you active when you're holding him in this position? Because, I was all over Chris Gutierrez against Dana Baccarel because there was things I saw in the striking that, played out pretty much almost the way that it did. But, for me, I don't know, man. I just see Kyung-Yo Kang has a chance, but, I'm just going to go with Dana Baccarel. I think that this is his spot. I think he's going to land, either have big moments, be able to get back to his feet, and potentially even finish this fight. Fight doesn't go the distance is also a play on this one, depending on what the line's sitting at. You can throw the lines up there in a minute. But I'm going to go with Dana Baccarel. I don't know if I want to throw him in a parlay. And we're sort of veering away from those anyways. I think 2-team parlays, those kinds of things are great. Shout out to, Volkov. Volkov was awesome. I got the KO and decision. Did I really think the KO was going to happen? No, man, it's been a while, but that worked out beautifully. But anyways, back to this. What is your take on this fight? I think Dana Baccarel is the side, but I wouldn't be surprised if I could see him lose.
Yeah, there's another one of these fights where I'm actually going to side with the dog on this one. I like Baccarel. I can never pronounce this dude's name.
Baccarel Dana.
I like Baccarel Dana, man. I think he's a good fighter. I think we saw a lot exposed in that Chris Gutierrez fight. And Kong Hong Koi, man, this guy owes me one because that Randy Yahya fight, The guy had that fight in the bag, and the worst fight IQ shooting for that takedown in the third just to get put on his back. Just didn't make any sense.
I argue if you had worse IQ, the fighter who had a bad IQ against Yaya, or you betting against Ronnie Yaya. Why would you even bet in a Ronnie Yaya fight? That's horrible. Come on, man.
That was
that guy finds ways to win. You don't even know how. You're like, at the end of it, you're like, oh yeah. Whether he's a backpack or a submission that comes out of nowhere, that guy just doesn't go away. He's like, anyway, moving on. Sorry to interrupt.
That's good, brother. But yeah, I like Ho Kang in this fight, man. I think that as long as he can withstand the first round, he's going to be able to mix in his takedowns. I don't think he's got the better striking, but he does have fairly decent technical striking. Where with Bagarel, he tends just to like the guy's going in the KO you, but he doesn't have the most technical striking. And as I said, like I think Chris Gutierrez kind of exposed that a fair bit. So this is another one of these fights where I'm on the dog. And I'm with you though. I like the fight doesn't go the distance because I think if Kang gets him out, I think if Kang wins, it's probably going to be late. And I think if Bagarel wins, it's going to be early.
Yeah, it'll either be a TKO ground and pound or submission that opens itself up, a neck that opens itself up from getting hit on the ground and Kang finishes him off, or Bagarel just either lands all 3 rounds and or gets him out in the first 2. So I'm with you on exactly how you can see the fight playing out. I'm just more leaning on the Bagarel side as well too. Next fight on the card, we have Silvana Gomez Juarez against Na Liang. 10-4-0. Juarez not having the greatest start in the UFC, but she was the sacrificial lamb to my girl, Lupita Godinez. She really, let's be honest, had no chance in that fight once you see them standing toe-to-toe. Godinez is a different animal right now. She's at a different level compared to where Juarez is. But Silvana has some hands, man. She's got some good striking, and she also has some pop in her hands too. She has some power. We know that. She can go to 3 rounds. Na Liang, from what I saw on tape, is, she may present some of the problems that Juarez really can't figure out. She has 16% takedown defense in the UFC. That ain't a good play. And I mean, part of that is a little inflated because she did go against the takedown machine in Godinez. But Na Liang looks like she may have all the tools to just put it to Juarez. What I'm going to lean on here is, Silvana Gomez Juarez has been in the UFC now. This is her 3rd fight. And I think she does have some good tools. And I think that she's going to be able to figure this fight out. I'm going to call it. I'm going to say that her, a 3rd fight, and she finally, after fighting at this level, is able to figure out how to stay to her feet just enough. She may get taken down, but I think she's going to land some big shots. But either way, this is going to be potentially, possibly one of the fight of the nights, depending on how it plays out. If Juarez can land some big shots, it's going to be pretty fun to watch. What's your take on this one?
Fuck this one's a tough one for me. But honestly, fight doesn't go the distance is kind of where I put my money on this one. With Na Liang, man, like if you hell is her name? Give me 2 seconds here. With the Ariana Carlosi, that fight was pure fucking violence. If she can't get that fight, if she can't get her out of there, then she's gonna leave. She's gonna quit. So she's gonna blow her load in the first round, and at that point in time, Juarez is gonna take over. And she's probably going to end up TKing over. If you look at her record, man, got round 1, round 1, round 1, round 1, round 2, round 2. She finishes all of her fights in the first round, except for 2 of which I'm looking at a record.
And did you say what the line is sitting at for a fight doesn't go?
Unfortunately, I don't have it on the book that I'm looking at right now. The last 2 fights I do not have.
That's all right. I mean, either way, we're going to be able to tweet this all out, and then I will rehash any of our, bigger picks on Thursday. I'm going to be, going live on Instagram, and then probably Friday morning have the podcast from that Instagram out for everybody to re-listen to. So yeah, man, I think that definitely some cool takes on this one, and this is going to actually be a fun fight, man. I'm looking forward to it, to be honest. I know that women's MMA, especially a little bit lower level, that women's MMA gets shit on, but we're finding that there's some dominant wrestlers, there's some dominant grapplings, and it's time to stop shitting on women's MMA so much. It is harder to bet, though. As the talent pool gets bigger, it actually will get a little bit easier to bet because there'll be levels and you'll be able to see things a little bit more clearly. But sometimes when you have people coming up, you don't quite know what level they're at. And it is hard to sort of gauge things when you're betting fights. So anyways, I digress, and we will move on to another women's MMA fight, the final fight on the card. And I do have a pretty solid take on this fight because, Ramona, I had some, not hopes, but I figured she'd be able to at least be able to come in here and have some matchups for herself that she could at least have a decent MMA run. And I just don't know if that's going to be the case with the matchup that she's given to Jocelyn Edwards. Ramona Pascual showed that she could take down the smaller opponent in her last fight. She was able to actually, 1 second, my brain just, she was able to take down Josie Nunez, but ultimately ended up getting hit and land. You know, she was smashed multiple times, and that's a much smaller fighter, man. And on the feet, she didn't look like she could really hang. Some decent stand-up, decent grappling, but just doesn't look like she is UFC caliber. And when we look on the other side of things, Jocelyn Edwards, she's had her struggles in the UFC, but her striking is sick. And I think she's going to be able to pick apart with Mona all the way through this fight, 3-round decision. And I think that if the only path to victory for Mona is a takedown, obviously, and the only difference is I think that Edwards is a little bit too big, a little bit too long, a little bit too lanky, and I think she's going to be able to actually counter with her leverage of her long arms up against the cage and getting overhooks and getting underhooks, being able to fight the cage work if it actually goes there, because that's really the only path for Mona. I think if it stays on the feet, stays at distance, Edwards is just going to piece her the fuck up. And I strongly lean Edwards in this fight. This is a great way to start off. If you have I can even do an early card parlay. Those are fun ones to do, three pieces. Get off to a good start in the night. I think that Jocelyn Edwards is definitely a piece somewhere. If you want to add her in, I think she wins this fight pretty handily, to be honest.
I agree. I'll admit I haven't done too much tape study in this fight. Jocelyn Edwards, I know that she got her face rocked by Molly McCann in her last fight, but despite that, man, I think her striking and grappling will be definitely what prevails in this one. I've watched some tape on Ramona, 6-3. She seems like she has decent striking, decent grappling, but I think that at the end of the day, she's biased on her. If you look at a lot of her fights, she's fighting people who are 0-0, 4-5, 0-0, 2-0, and then got thrown to the wolves against Nunez. So it's hard to really see how she's going to come out, but I agree with you, man. I think Jocelyn Edwards is just going to keep her on the back foot. It's a larger cage. I think it's heavily going to favor her, and I think she's probably going to end up putting a beating on her. And I agree, man.
Yeah, and sorry, what did you say the line was at?
The line right now is sitting at -175 for Edwards, with their turn being a +150.
Yeah, I mean, I think that line's pretty well aligned. I mean, Mona, the problem is she couldn't stop Nunez from closing the distance on her with her striking. She couldn't really find her range and really get it figured out. And if she couldn't do that, then she's not going to be able to now deal on the opposite side of this, where Edwards is just going to find her range and piece her up. I mean, I just don't see it unless we see something drastically different from this woman. I think she's going to get taken out potentially, if not decisioned. Decision's more likely, actually, but likely even look at the KO or decision prop on this one, just for fun, just to get a little more something on it. But anyways, I think that is probably the best angle in this fight. I don't really see Mona having a shot, and we've really hit some really damn good spots, I think, man. So in looking at this, if you were, normally we would look at trying to get a parlay together. I don't really care about that. If you were to look at your strongest play on the card minus Shevchenko, what is your strongest play on the card?
Well, this is also a Shevchenko kind of read, but yeah, Glover Teixeira and your Prochazka under 3.5. I think it's probably your best bet. Money line wise, I'll go out there and give something a little bit of equal value and go with Jack Della. I think Jack Della is just gonna run through him even this fight. So,
and I just realized something. We didn't talk about Brendan Allen and Jacob Malkoun, did we?
We did not.
Do you want to start off with the odds on that one?
The odds on that one right now are sitting at -275 for Allen, with the return on Jacob Malkoun being at +225.
See, man, I think that line's way too inflated at this point. What I saw to Jacob Malkoun in his last fight, he is active in his clinch game. He is active in what he needs to do. So when he's clinching you up against the cage and he's got your hips, he's still throwing strikes too. When he's trying to trip you up, he's pretty crafty up against the cage. So I get that Allen's going to want to take it down to the ground. But my whole point is Malkoun is going to be able to actually work in those situations up against the cage. And I think he's going to be able to potentially keep this on the feet. And I don't know, man. It's definitely an interesting fight. What's your thoughts on this one? I just think the line's a little bit too inflated. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, well, this is where you and I will agree once again. Like, I don't know how you can justify Brendan Allen being a minus 275 favorite.
It showed
And
lack of confidence in the past, man. It's hard to.
that's it. And honestly, type of guy, it's not that he gives up, but he's somebody that seems to be, if he doesn't get his way early, he definitely shows
Hmm.
some concerns. Like, whenever he beat Sam Alvey, lost Chris Curtis, we all cashed on that. Paulie and Soriano, Carl Robertson. Like, it's not like the guy's beating the best of the best. And I don't know, man. I kind of like Malkoun in this fight, but I don't like him enough just to bet him straight to the money line. Um, Jacob Malkoun by decision is plus 800, which I think is a fucking robbery of a number because as I said, I don't think
I
Jacob
like that
Malkoun,
take.
yeah, like I don't think he's gonna be the one to finish this fight by any stretch of the imagination. Like they have the KO submission at plus 350. I'd reverse those. Like he's not the type of guy that's going to come out here and finish this fight. He's going to grind him out to a decision. He's going
Yep,
to be active
likely.
in the clinch. And if there's going to be a finish, it's going to come from the Allen side for sure.
I'm glad we're
So
on the same side of this. I mean, you do see it now, and I just can't put money behind it in most cases. It depends on the matchup. But when someone has a pop in their hands, this is where Allen is going to have an issue. He does sort of fold, and you do see that in some fights. He did in the Curtis fight, and if you watch that, that is the path to victory. If you throw some adversity at him and just get in his face, he doesn't like it, man. So Makun, I think he's not scared of getting the clinch with him, and definitely interested in this one. I think that he's definitely a dog for me.
yeah,
Initially, I was leaning Allen. I'm on Makun on this one.
I'm 50-50, and I'll be honest with the lines what scares me away from it. But at the end of the day, like against AJ Dobson, Malkoun was like I think a plus 400 underdog. And he came in here and just like, I don't give a fuck what people have to say. He took some of AJ's hardest strikes and just took him to the ground and just did what he had to do. He did the same thing against Abdul Rakassan, which is once again a dude that if he touches you, you are going to sleep. So for anybody who thinks that Brendan Allen's going to come in here and be the guy that's just going to put him to sleep, like this is a tough fight. And I don't understand the line. Like if Allen was placed at like a minus 150, I'd have a little bit more understanding. I can see him being the rightful favorite, but in Malkoun's last two fights, he's been a plus 300 underdog and a plus 400 underdog, and he's won both of them. So
He's just the more aggressive striker. He's the more aggressive grappler, and I just think that in this type of matchup, although Allen may have he has some sharp striking, some obviously solid grappling, some submission wins, but the reality of the fact is I just see Malkoun doing this, man. I go with Malkoun the dog.
like it.
Okay, so as we were getting back to it, because we did sort of jump away there, but what did you say was your strongest play?
Oh, well, I said Glover Yuri under 3.5. That fight's getting finished in the first or it's getting finished in the second. But if that fight goes longer than that, I'd be surprised. But from a money line perspective, I think Jack Della minus 150 is probably the most value you have on this card.
Yeah, I think that's one of the strongest money line plays you can play. I just don't think that Amib in the world that we're living in wins a decision or wins, in any way by finishing the fight. I don't know if he's going to get, barring a weird club and sub situation, like, you know what I mean? I don't see him working to a submission. I don't see him, smashing him in control time. I see it going that way pretty heavily to Madeline. I think the line's a little bit off, but it is partly because he is still a little bit more green as far as the UFC is concerned. So let's take advantage of it while we can, because after this fight, we're not going to be able to take advantage of it. He's going to be like a minus 280. All right. Any other lines that you can think of? I mean, I really do like the Justin Edwards. I know that parlaying women's MMA, I think I'm going to stay away from moving forward. But attacking a fight when you see an angle, why not? I'm not saying heavy on it, but maybe a little bit of Justin Edwards KO decision, maybe a unit would maybe be a play. But any other fights? I mean, I'm looking forward to obviously Joanna and Wiley Zhang. I think that really your under 3.5 is probably one of the strongest plays. You're right. And then I can't really argue with you on any of it. I really like the idea of the Jake Matthews live. I know you're more leaning Matthews, but the Jake Matthews live and then going under Fialho as KO first round. I think that's just a fun way to isolate that fight and mess around with it. But the rest of them, man, sorry, go on.
No, one other thing I will point out is as we were talking about Naliang, one of the plays that I will definitely be playing as a sharper play is Naliang by submission in the first round, because that is 100% her only win condition. It's like I always bring it back, man. Like the Joanderson Brito fight, we're all heavy on Fiallo in that fight, but or not Fiallo, sorry, Andre Fili in that fight. But if you see wherever one fighter really has one win condition, you should always play that, because at the end of the day, you know exactly what they are going for. And in all of her fights, and it's not like she's got 4 fights, she's got about a 20 fight long MMA record. She's finishing things in the first, or she's getting finished. So you got to play the people's win conditions.
That really is the best way to look at fights, man. You just break down, look at the win conditions, 100, like where their percentages are, where they lie. And then if you really do see the one win condition, and that person is, if it's a pick 'em, it's a good way to roll. Okay, man. I think that we've hit every angle. I'm really looking forward to having on a man who has cornered so many people. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm going to go through the list. I actually started doing it as I'm going to break down his intro, and the list is absolutely crazy in the Muay Thai world, in the kickboxing world, in the MMA world, and then even having UFC fighters that he's cornered. He was cut man for Glover Teixeira. It's crazy. Like, I'm really excited. I think this is a perfect card for him to break down some of the fights that we have coming up, some solid strikers, and he has a little bit of a personal take on some of these fights as well too. I mean, the guy's got to do tape for Mike Malott. The guy's got to do tape for Diana Belbita, and there's a lot of up and coming fighters coming up out of House of Champions, so I'm pretty excited for that. But I digress. As always, we try to find angles. We try to break down fights. We try to just have fun while doing it, and sometimes the weeks are really fucking hard. Holly home. On top of that, if you have been listening and don't like us, I'm confused. But hey, keep listening and appreciate your support. And as always,
What we've got here is failure to communicate.